even though it's not specifically Mopar related, I thought we'd talk about it primarily because of what it's gonna do to you and me and everyone else who wants to get into this. And that is the fact that the original Bullitt 68 GT390 Mustang, the car that was one of two of the stunt cars, or of the hero cars that Steve McQueen himself drove in the movie Bullitt. That car was discovered, believe it or not, we live in the town of Hendersonville, Tennessee. It's just north of Nashville. And my tech editor, Mike Wilkins, and myself, we both live here. And it turns out that car, unbeknownst to Mike, was about 3 miles from his house. And it had been in a barn up in the hills for forever. And that car was discovered. There was a little bit of a search that went out a few years ago when the other Hero Mustang that had been completely gutted, the chassis, the unibody chassis, had shown up in Mexico, in a body shop in Mexico. And that was a big hullabaloo, was, hey, we found the car from the Mustang from Bullitt. And suddenly a guy springs up and he goes, well, I've got the real one. Well, it turns out that he did. I'm going to actually pull up. Here, let me do this. I had it ready. Okay. His name is Steve Kiernan. All right. Steve, appropriately enough, Steve's dad had actually bought the car at auction back when he lived in California. And then he moved out to the East Coast and had the car and drove it around. Steve's mom drove the car around, drove the kids to school in it, which is actually pretty cool. And then later became Steve's. Steve moved out here several years ago, put it in the barn, always had an interest in putting it back together, but never got it running. When Ford was getting ready to do the anniversary edition of the Bullitt Mustang, and this was around 2018, that car sprung up. And everyone and their mother wanted to buy the car, and Steve knew what he had. And there was some sentimental value, and everyone who wanted to collect the car, even Ford itself. Ford had made several offers to buy the car. Steve wasn't going to let it go. Well, the car went to auction this weekend. And if you didn't know, it brought in $3.4 million. All right. Obviously, there's some stipulations involved with purchasing the car, especially in spending that kind of money. But $3.4 million, that's the gunshot heard around the world, especially in the automotive world. And almost immediately, and I'm not joking, you guys can do the search yourself on Google, every knucklehead with an old Mustang, especially if it got close to being a 68 fastback GT390, thought they were sitting on a gold mine. Regardless of the fact of the pedigree of the car, the fact that this was the only car that was complete, that Steve McQueen himself drove, that was in the movie, it didn't matter. Guys with 65 fastbacks started saying, my car is worth $150,000. Guys with 71 Mach 1s were saying their car was worth $70,000. It's madness, okay? And the Ford Mustang guys, now obviously this isn't anything new to them. Back with the Gone in 60 Seconds movie with Nick Cage and that silver GT 500 Shelby clone that they had called Eleanor, which wasn't even a really close, it was kind of a resto mod version of an original 500 KR. That was really the car, was the King Road. Anyhow, when those cars, every 67 fastback suddenly started getting snatched up, and every 67 notchback started getting snatched up, and every fastback from every generation started becoming a Super Snake or a King Road clone or whatever. You know, everyone wanted to have a silver with black stripes fastback Mustang. So what happens is that when a classic car enters the public lexicon, suddenly the tourists want one. I remember when the first Fast and Furious movie came out, and a guy that I knew who ran ran a salvage yard in Carson, California, he started getting guys calling him up saying, "Hey, do you have a '70 Charger RT?" He's like, dude, we got like Toyota Corollas and like, Chevy Silverados. And that was, there's just a lot of people who are kind of clueless thinking, oh, well, they got to be everywhere. Well, unfortunately, no, that's not the case. And, people who want to make General Lee clones, and people who want to make Fast and Furious clones, and when people want these cars, they'll start coming out of the woodwork, and they'll start paying really crazy money. And that's when we start seeing classic cars, or cars that weren't necessarily as desirable. We start seeing those cars inflate like crazy. And that, unfortunately, is a double-edged sword. Hey, that's great if you've got a car and you hit rough times and you've got to sell it. You don't really want to. Oh, that sucks. It breaks your heart to do it. But, hey, listen, I got to, kid needs braces, or, kids are going to college or what have you. You might have to sell your car. That sucks, and my heart goes out to you, buddy, because, no one wants to do that. But the car flippers and the guys who are taking advantage of that surge in popularity, I hate to say it, but they're the guys who are damaging the hobby, especially for a young guy coming in. There might be some dude, don't get me wrong, a 17-year-old is very unlikely he's going to find a 70 Coronet in decent shape for a song, for $1,800 or what have you. Unless someone really feels bad and wants to help them out. But it's kind of becoming a big money game, and it's becoming a old man's game. And that's too bad, because at the same time we sit around and we go, oh man, why aren't there more kids at the car show? Well, there's not a lot of kids at the car show because there's no way that kid's getting into one. And if now we are seeing a lot of guys are getting into four-doors just because, hey, that's what's available. If I was to go four-door personally, I'd go with a wagon. Because if you're going to go big, dude. Go big, big, big. I wonder if we're going to see a day where the C bodies get the love and the attention that the A, B, and E bodies get. That's yet to be seen. But it might be a really cool day if we start seeing, big Imperials and Newports and 300s and Furies and Sport Furies getting that kind of attention. So anyway, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it'll help spur the aftermarket to support us with cars. That's a big sale. $3.5 million or $3.4 million isn't anything to sneeze at. I just hope that it bears more fruit positively than it does negatively. Guys, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Make sure to check us out Monday through Friday at moparconnectionmagazine.com. And we will continue publishing awesome new articles every day, entirely free to you, subscription free. As long as you got a Wi-Fi signal on your phone or on your desktop computer, you can check us out. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.